If we do nothing, we would need to pay around $38 trillion a year.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I found it mind-boggling when we talk about the numbers basically of the inaction.
So I think it is quite important to highlight that every person and every stakeholder has a role to play when it comes to net zero. Transport emissions, your number of trips, your flights a year, that would have a direct impact on your personal footprint. And when we talk about sustainability, if it's integrated from the leadership in terms of business strategy and not just department job, this is where change happens and this is where progress happens.
And when you think about it at a individual level, what does it mean for you personally to have a green mind?
A green mind.
Welcome, Mushed. The founder of Mushed Talks. It's great that you join me today for this conversation.
Thank you, Walewein, for having me.
Yeah, I actually am following your podcast quite regularly, and you recently posted quite a bit about the cost of action versus inaction. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I found it mind-boggling when we talk about the numbers basically of the inaction.
Sure thing. I think the comparison is extremely important because when we talk about the cost, we always talk about the cost of climate action, how much additional investment is needed. Yeah. But there's another part to the story. Yes, climate action would need additional investment. Estimates estimate that we would need between $1 to $1.5 trillion a year by 2050. But on the opposite side, if we do nothing, we would need to pay around $38 trillion a year. So the difference is huge. And this $38 trillion are costs associated with destroyed infrastructure, with displacement, with health costs, increased food prices, and many other areas where climate change has an impact. Yeah. So it is extremely important to highlight the difference. And when we consider the cost of climate action, we also need to consider the cost of climate inaction and what if we do nothing. Yeah. On top of that, net zero doesn't mean economic contraction. Net zero also means that we will prosper in our economy. In fact, IMF estimates that we will increase the global GDP by 7% by 2050 just by net zero. Yeah. So here, net zero is not anymore an environmental solution. It's not anymore a climate solution, but it's also an economic solution. Yeah. A solution for us where we can create economic resilience and long-term growth.
Yeah. Green Minds is where industry leaders and innovators talk about what's next in sustainability. Sorry to interrupt the show, but if you want to know more about sustainability, make sure you hit subscribe. And yet, it always sounds like a very big thing when you talk about inaction versus action, the cost of it. If you talk about net zero, a lot of people may think, but how do I do that? I mean, I'm just an individual living in our case, in Dubai. How do you make such a big topic small enough for people to actually figure out how they can do something with it themselves in their daily lives?
Mm-hmm. So I think it is quite important to highlight that every person and every stakeholder has a role to play when it comes to net zero. Yeah. So achieving net zero isn't just one stakeholder responsibility. Yeah. It's a responsibility of everyone. And end users are definitely responsible. In fact, end users can contribute up to 10% of the global emissions. So without end users, without the change of consumer behavior, there is a missing part of the puzzle when we talk about net zero. So climate action or consumer behavior is very much needed. Yeah. And honestly, how can a person reduce their emissions? There are multiple ways. First of all, targeting transport. If there is a certain way that you can reduce your transport emissions, your number of trips, your flights a year, that would have a direct impact on your personal footprint. Also, the type of food you eat. If you eat vegetarian or vegan, the carbon emissions are much lower than eating meat-based meals. And these are simple solutions that can be adopted, but I think what is important is, do we feel responsible toward climate change? Do we feel that we have a part to play? And that's a very important topic.
I found it interesting, actually, because a few weeks ago you posted a comparison where you say we're very used to counting calories, for example, but not carbon as such. So in that way, I think people should think sometimes in very simple terms, I think, when we look at our own personal lives. But obviously, that would also require a framework in which you can actually do certain things. Because, you can fly less in a year. But at the same time, in our daily lives, what do we do with waste, for example, that we all generate? Is that something that you feel needs to be driven top down from the government level, or is that something that we have a responsibility ourselves also?
So there are multiple ways of addressing such things. Definitely, government has a very important role to play, but as I mentioned, also us on personal level, we have our part to play. If you look at the global greenhouse emissions reductions required by 2050, you would see that theoretically 70% of these emissions can be reduced by comprehensive changes or comprehensive shifts in consumer behavior. 70%. But can we achieve that 70%? No, because we would need systems, we would need infrastructure, we would need policies that will activate. So, for example, a city that doesn't have electric vehicles infrastructure, like you would not have the choice to go electrical and to replace your car with an electric vehicle. So that's why system changes are needed. But system changes alone without consumer behavior is also wouldn't complete the story. For us, also consumer behavior, as I mentioned, 10% is where the change also happens.
So when you look at Dubai in particular, and not only is Dubai a fast-growing city, there are lots of new properties, obviously, but there is also an existing inventory. And we look at things like the efficiency of a building, the energy, how it's consumed, and all these things. What sort of do you believe should be the focus areas from a municipality perspective to set the framework so that residents can actually then contribute positively to moving towards that net zero target?
On the building sector specifically, so there has been a lot of efforts done in Dubai and the region on improving the energy efficiency of new buildings and existing buildings. New buildings through building regulations, through adding elements in the building regulations, green building code that include elements in terms of type of lighting, type of appliances, HVAC systems, insulation, all of that help in advancing energy efficiency and reducing the demand in new buildings. But also existing buildings through retrofit programs. Dubai has the oldest retrofit program in the region and has been a pioneer in developing retrofitting programs. So all of these are extremely important. From a consumer point of view, there are multiple measures that can be considered. For example, I'll give you an example which we always give about adjusting the set point temperature. And we talk about adjusting the set point temperature 24 degrees. Many people laugh because they're so accustomed to a temperature of 16 and 18 degrees. And for them, this is what comfort is. They kind of associated very cold air with comfort. For them, that's comfort. But comfort is about balance. It's about sitting in your house and feeling comfortable, it's not about cold air. So there are multiple measures that can be considered from a consumer perspective. And I think this is where an additional part where we can really contribute to change. First, it comes with policies, systems, and then consumer behavior. Definitely consumer behavior is very difficult to address, not only here in this part of the world, but globally. We were talking about the difference in habits, the difference in cultures. We also value very much comfort and luxury in this part of the world. So all of these are challenges, but I think we're growing from a consumer behavior perspective.
Yeah, so I think that one of the big roles that policymakers have is to put a framework in place that then obviously by others need to be sort of like filled in a particular way, because you're a very big proponent obviously of a circular economy. And so tell me a little bit about that, because that may not be a concept that is known by everybody, what is meant by that.
I think what the biggest misconception of circularity is that when we talk about circular economy, we directly think about recycling and segregation of waste. While circular economy goes beyond and much beyond that, it starts with reusing, redesigning products, rethinking, remanufacturing, repurposing. All of these are concepts of circularity, are very important concepts of circularity, and come before recycling. So I think that shift of mindset is needed when we think of circularity, and there's a lot of potential, honestly, and there's a lot of opportunities out there.
And do you see already some of these concepts really being executed here in the region, as an example?
There is many concepts that have been executed here in the region. There's a fantastic food rescue program, Na'ma, where any excess of food, it can be redistributed again. So that's extending the lifetime and avoiding it from going to waste. Amazing initiatives done also by hotels where they collect, I've seen it in one of the hotels in Dubai Marina, they collect some plastic and they do some art. They collect plastic from the community and they do some art to be showcased in the lobby of the hotel. Yeah. So there are many. On cooling as well, we're seeing cooling as a service being also developed. Yeah. And many businesses are started doing this as a service option. You can see car sharing as well in Dubai, where you can get a car and then return it back. You don't need to own it as well. So there are multiple examples, I think, but there's also a lot of potential. And Dubai is the perfect place, honestly, to test such systems.
When you look from your point of view, where the potential lies, what is sort of like, actually, let's take one step back. What happened? What do you believe is sort of like the silent, quote unquote, not so visible movement forward at a community level, at a municipality level, that we as a resident may not always think about or see, but that that in Dubai is actually moving very nicely, rapidly towards the net zero goal. Is there anything?
There are things that are not silent. You know about in terms of the most fastest or the most visible is the adoption of renewable energy, and how renewable energy isn't anymore a pilot project. Solar isn't anymore a pilot project. It's part of the strategy. There are targets. It's part also of the energy mix. Yeah. 20%, more than 20% in Dubai's electricity is solar. Yeah. So it is very, very much visible. What is invisible is the improvements that's happening on the building level, on energy efficiency and energy consumption. Because when you install solar, you see it. It's very tangible, it's very visible. Everyone would know that you're generating clean energy. But when you improve the energy efficiency in your house, in your building, it's not visible. So and that plays a very important role in achieving net zero. In fact, globally, we would need to reduce the building energy intensity by 30% to 50% to align with the net zero targets. Yeah. So it's not only about generating clean energy, it's also about reducing demand. And I think that's the silent shift happening. It depends on the area. If we speak about water, you would see that recycled water has been a great success story for the region as well. 100% of the irrigated spaces, public spaces in Dubai are irrigated by recycled water. Yeah. So that's a great success story and a reduction of desalinated water. Yeah. There is a multiple of success stories, I would say, here from Dubai.
And when you talk about the building, the improvements that can be made over there, where do you think the responsibility lies primarily? Is that the developer or the asset owner or the operator who sort of needs to take the lead in that, especially with existing inventory? Because in new builds, you can adjust certain things, but
it's a joint responsibility, honestly, because there's much can be done as well from a facility management point of view in terms of energy management, you know.
Yeah.
So, and you would need the owner whenever you have major retrofits happening. You would need the operator as well. So I think of it of a definitely of a joint effort. But I also think that owners and developers are also very much responsible because they own, develop the property. So any changes they would take from the beginning of the design of the project would have an influence on how it is operated.
Yeah.
So I see the developers playing a significant role.
I also think that at the end of the day, and we spoke about this before we stepped into the studio, but ultimately, if the developer is investing in the retrofit and also methodologies to extend the asset life, it will ultimately, I believe, in that whole context, add value to the property. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, the main issue, it's not quantified and it's not reported. And I think when we start quantifying these the additional benefits to retrofitting, which you mentioned, it's not only about you're reducing the energy consumption and how it is influencing the energy bill, but how much you're creating comfort in the building. And this is not quantified from a financial point of view. If you speak about offices, how much you're reducing the absenteeism, that you're improving the productivity. There's multiple aspects and which are not quantified from a financial point of view. And whenever we need to put some effort into quantifying these benefits to see the whole benefit from a retrofit as well.
You think that's understood well?
I don't think it's understood well. I think there's a lot that needs to be done into raising the level of awareness, into what are the benefits or the secondary benefits of a retrofit, for sure.
Yeah, because it is very clear there is a correlation. For example, relative humidity in a building has a massive impact, obviously, on unplanned absenteeism, sickness, in other words, in office environments. And just 1% makes a huge difference already. So if you can control your HVAC system better in that context, you obviously have a gain straight away. And I feel in conversations that we have with a lot of different types of companies here in the region that sort of like the different departments in a company may not talk to each other properly or well enough to oversee all the impact. HR is not necessarily talking to the facility management people. And yet there is a very big handover, I feel.
Definitely, I think that's the role of leadership, honestly. Yeah. And when we talk about sustainability, if it's integrated from the leadership in terms of business strategy and not just a department job, this is where change happens and this is where progress happens. Yeah. And the importance of integrating sustainability in the DNA of companies is crucial for the success of any sustainability initiative.
Yeah, and your platform, Mushed Talks, is actually also very much focused on that educational component as such. Why did you choose that angle? Because sustainability, it is as a word, it is a bit of a container word, but at the end of the day, you're talking to a very specific group of people. So what is the reason why you chose that educational component?
I think what is the main objective behind Mushed Talks was to speak to professionals, and to speak to business owners and businessmen about sustainability. So we wanted initially to simplify sustainability as much as possible, because there's a lot of misconceptions around sustainability. You find a lot of people on LinkedIn and in events as well speaking about sustainability, and they don't get the basic concepts. So there is a gap there. So it's not only a gap in the public, they don't get sustainability very much, but it's also within professionals. So that was the main reason behind creating an educational program on sustainability on social media, because everyone is on social media nowadays.
Yeah.
And try to educate and to also not only educate, but also in many cases to open discussions from different angles. Why sustainability is failing, why we're not moving in the right direction, cost of action versus cost of inaction, testing concepts and like carbon footprint or carbon labels for everything, just to kind of give a hint, or where professionals start thinking, also expanding their scope of thought.
Have you seen any particular sort of initiative in the market, maybe even triggered by some of the discussions that you're trying to sort of open up? Have you seen any examples in the market where you say, wow, that is actually something that I'm mighty impressed with, that people are working on that?
I received a lot of comments based on some of the videos on Mushed Talks, and one comes to mind now with a friend of mine who owns a company on carbon accounting, and he told me his client called him and he's like, what he saw my video, and he's like, why we're not considering scope 4 and scope 5 emissions. So and because people started speaking about scope 1 and scope 2, and then scope 3 came into the picture, but there's a different also level of scopes when we talk about scope 4 and scope 5. So I think this is the main objective, is just to start opening discussions that hasn't been opened before. And that's one of the examples I've heard of. There's multiple others, and I'm happy to see the engagement, honestly, on the platform, and see how conversations can really start happening, about either scope 4 and scope 5, because the responsibility of a business isn't only about your emissions and your influence on the supply chain and the emissions of supply chain, but also the decisions you make in terms of investment, and that's scope 5, how much you influence the market. We mentioned changes to indoor air quality and how to quantify it into financial. So any study from that, if a company does that study, they will not get direct return from the study, but they can help the market grow. And that's the contribution of companies that usually we don't talk about. So it is extremely important to discuss these topics and to have a platform where people can engage on such topics.
And I think also one of the other things that caught my eye some time ago is that there was a nice sort of image on companies planning, but when is the action actually taking place? When are we actually going to do something? Because at the end of the day, I think, there is always a little bit of investment that needs to be made before you get the joy of whatever it is that you're trying to influence. We see it in our daily lives also when we work with clients about implementing simple protocols to do certain cleaning jobs and get ultimately the energy savings, in our case around HVAC and all these things. But it needs to become tangible. You need to actually have the discussions inside companies also about this is what we achieved. And there are actually, in my opinion, quite a few developers here in the region that are starting to actually have those discussions also with their partners that they work with. And I think that's very encouraging. When you look at the UAE, I always find it very forward-looking. What is the sort of area where you believe this region can really take a lead, even if you put it in a global context when we talk about sustainability? Are there certain areas where the UAE or the region, the Middle East, shines in comparison?
When we talk about the region, definitely you would definitely talk about solar, you know, and because solar is abundant, the energy is there, and it's very cost effective compared to globally. So anything related to the solar industry would be definitely a star globally. And when we're talking about green hydrogen as well, so this is where production of cost-effective green hydrogen would need availability of solar and solar energy. That's one area definitely that UAE can be a leader in. And multiple areas, honestly. When we think also about sustainability, we think that sustainability is a new concept for us. But sustainability has been adopted way before. You know, here in the UAE, if you go to Al Fayyad district in Dubai, you would see how building design was using passive design measures was there. You would see the bargeels there, you would see the mashrabiyas there, how the city was designed in terms of the size of the corridors between the city and the airflow, all cooling the city without the need of ACs. So there's a lot of innovations and a lot of things that happened back in history and that we can revive and also use in modern buildings to spread the word, and sustainability.
But is then the provoking question sometimes all our progress that we have made and we want to have instant gratification in everything that we do, delivery at our doorstep at every moment of the day, all these things. Is there a limit then ultimately to what we should expect, quote unquote, in that comfort of our lives and revert back to some of the practices of the past?
I think we definitely, as I mentioned in the beginning, we live in part of the world where luxury is very much valued, where comfort is very much valued, where there's a lot of services in Dubai. And how we can make these services green, this is a question as well. So if you can receive it in a green way, can we reduce what we... these are the importance of personal choices and consumer behavior. Do I need that much? If I'm going to order 10 times a day, can I order at least once? That's a huge comparison. If I need to go 5 times to the supermarket, to the pharmacy, can I do that all the same time? Can I go to one spot and do that? And there are multiple initiatives that are actually been happening in Dubai. For example, the concept of 20-minute community or 30-minute city that will allow people to, for example, get all their basic needs within a walking distance in their community in 20 minutes. So the city is evolving also in that direction, and it's also giving people the option to do that or not. And this is where personal responsibility comes into play.
Yeah, it does. That is for sure. I mean, ultimately, I think we have to realize ourselves much more every day that we have a role to play, and we can sit and wait until somebody else does it, but that is not really how it works. If you had a recommendation for leaders in companies, let's say between now and 2030, what would you say that should be your primary focus in your business, no matter what type of business you're running?
I think I would say that sustainability isn't about going green. Sustainability is about a business model nowadays. So for you to survive in the future, to future-proof your business, you would need to consider sustainability. It's not an option. We spoke about the cost of inaction a lot, and there's the profits of companies will be hit very hard due to the climate crisis. So if you want to future-proof your business, you will need to integrate sustainability and ESG within your strategy, your business strategy.
Yeah. And when you think about it at a individual level, what does it mean for you personally to have a green mind?
A green mind. Yeah, that's the title of
the title of the podcast.
Yeah, which is a very nice title, honestly. I think a green mind is very much connected to the heart, honestly. Green mind and green heart, I'd like to add that. We are all hardwired to connection with nature, to connection with the planet, to connection with each other. And at some point we lost that connection. And I think a green mind and a green heart is a person who tries to rebuild that connection and strengthen that connection.
Majd, thank you very much for this conversation. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Don't miss the next big conversation about sustainability. Hit subscribe.